My name is Christy Deeds, and I would like to discuss differentiating instruction. Differentiating instruction is an approach that teachers can use to help students within her class or his class with a multitude of different types of learning. It could help students that are ELL students that are possibly struggling to understand vocabulary in this language. It could be different levels of intelligence. Students who are gifted or talented, those students who are just considered like an average or typical student, students with other brain injuries or other types of learning abilities. So these students that are within the class, the teacher would use this approach to help meet the needs of all these different types of students. They would work in learning communities within the classroom to where each of them has a different idea, a different opportunity to learn and to grow through different techniques and different activities. The teacher could collaborate with the teachers within her group, because this could also be paired with response to intervention to help those students who are struggling, and those teachers could then use their different rooms to pair different students and have the students move within different classrooms to be able to learn in different communities throughout that particular grade. And then those teachers would collaborate together on what they could change, what they could do better. This type of teaching is a multiple strategy approach with different types of layering or scaffolding, bringing in old material where some would need more of that and others would not necessarily need so much review to build on the new concepts. This would be something that they would need to adapt to meet the needs of students, and sometimes that adaptation could be right there in the moment of the lesson. The teacher would need to be able to discern the differences in the students and differentiate the different types of learning that they do. This also helps team building and would be a team approach with the teachers within the grade, but then also within those students. The next thought about differentiated instruction is, how do teachers do that? How do teachers instruct in that type of way? And the beginning of that would need to be the way that the teachers assess the students. They need to assess them often, starting at the very beginning of the school year. They need to assess before they have a lesson or a unit, and then have assessments during that unit, and then post-unit or lesson, so that they can see what the students learned and what they need help with. Some of the ways to do this is that teachers can just observe the students as they're just in their normal everyday discussion and talking with other students in the class, and watch them to pick up on their learning abilities and their learning needs and the different things that they have. The students would work in groups or possibly individually, if that's how they work and learn the best, to meet their particular learning needs. The teacher would apply different or altered strategies for each group. Some might be doing an art project while others are playing a game, or collaborating and having critical thinking discussions amongst their peers to learn and understand and solve the science problem or the social studies concept. These group activities would be different types of learning strategies that would be really engaging, that could help pique the interest of each individual student and what they like. The teacher would also move between the groups so that she could clarify instruction, she could help with any misunderstandings, she could bring encouragement, she could also use those opportunities to assess different individuals. So if you're preparing the students to have a year of differentiated instruction, I would think that you would want to begin with a team effort. So as the students become in for that year, to really begin to talk about what a team is. And one way to showcase the individual and encourage the individual, but then also a team mentality is to start off the year with show and tell. Allow the students to bring ideas and things that they can show their interests and the things that they like. Have the students listen to that and then encourage those particular students, and then have lessons that first week that talk about the uniqueness of each person, the interests, and how we can encourage different ones. And then the teacher can bring that full circle and talk about how we are a team or we are a family within this classroom, and we all are important and we want to all help each other learn and understand and grow as a team so that we can all succeed and achieve by the end of the year. And the lessons and discussions that they can have about differences and how, students learn in different ways that can also be encouraging and help students that may feel inferior or feel like they're not smart or they can't understand. These types of things would begin to help students learn compassion and understanding for the differences that they have within the class. Another very vital part of preparing the students, I believe, is classroom management. The teacher really needs to work on the procedures and the rules that she has in the class, but specifically the procedures that she's going to have in place for this type of learning, to where they could even have like a dry run, to where once they understand the procedures, they could have a lesson that is presented to them to where they are broken up already in their particular groups, and the teacher could go through the whole time having them do their separate activities, walking around, encouraging, helping them, and then at the end really going through, what do you do when you're done? Where do the supplies go? How do we put things away? What type of voice do we have while we put them away? Where do we turn in our work at the end of the time? And then how do we return to our seats? And if she were to do all of these types of things before the students began their graded work, I think that when those lessons actually began, that the students would feel better about themselves. Preparing the classroom, just is it neat and organized? Arranging the classroom with their different learning goals in mind, areas for group work and games and activities and artwork, place where students can get on the floor and use manipulatives or build things or whatever the particular lesson is requiring. Having visible, concise, and simple rules, especially for those that are English language learners or ID students, so they can easily understand those things. And then having the desks arranged so that the teacher can easily move from group to group without any disruption. So a peek into the classroom instructions. The students will be grouped around the room. They will be engaged in different learning activities. They'll be having peer discussions and collaboration, and they'll be helping each other to understand what the stuff is about. This will be more a student-led type of idea and concept instead of always being teacher-led. The teacher, likewise, needs to be fully prepared not only for the lesson, for the objectives and the goals that she has for them, but in how each particular group is going to come about those objectives and goals. She needs to be going around and engaging each group and also each individual student and checking in on their progress. She can use these times to assess their particular understanding or work. She can also be encouraging the students with just that little look or glance or smile or thumbs up or sticker as she moves about the room. And then she can also be recognizing who needs more help, who needs a little bit more understanding about a specific topic. So the traditional classroom strategy seeks to just teach all the students the exact same lesson. The delivery is the same. The teacher usually uses her teacher edition book in whatever subject it happens to be. The students complete the same work. And unfortunately, if students don't understand and fall behind, then it's just something that they have to try to make up later. There's no time to hardly stop for that individual student that really needs the extra help. The goals and objectives and strategies are the same for every student, and this is like a cookie cutter type of way of teaching, and every student is different. And so the differentiated instructional classroom, the teacher, if we look at the lecturing lessons, just as an example, the teacher would lead the whole class in this lesson as the delivery is just her talking and explaining things. The students would need to follow along and take notes. And there really wouldn't be any time on hand for hands-on learning. But the multiple strategy lesson, the students would work in groups and the teacher would move within them and they would have opportunities to discuss and work things out. Their lesson some of the lesson goals might be different, and these would be hands-on learning opportunities. If you looked at assessing a student from their previous year's assessments, and that's how you group them, in a typical classroom, you might assess them that way. The student's growth is not going to be considered. They could have changed. The assessment outcome could have been wrong or incomplete, and then the grouping would be incorrect, or the type of way that you teach would be incorrect. But if you use current assessment, the assessment is going to be right where they're at. It's going to include the student's growth, and it would be appropriate. The comparison of just rewarding the whole class for participation is opposed to individual encouragement. So each student in the regular classroom, they're expected to speak out, they're expected to answer questions and participate, and they're called on in front of the room. They all get rewarded the same, and sometimes this will encourage students, but other times it will embarrass those students that are struggling or don't really understand the question or the concepts. But if you focus on rewarding the individual, this can encourage them. It helps them to have a simple encouragement or gesture instead of having it individual instead of class-wide, which would then encourage even the struggling students. It should be based on the individual. So if we determine not to lecture in the class and just teach that way, how could I encourage my fellow teachers other ways in how they could teach? Well, they could have student groups that are student-led. They could have discussion groups, hands-on activity groups like art groups or games or other building activities. They could have art expression to teach math concepts where they're making different symbols or colors or objects for their counting, and then use those things to help them count on or do other math concepts. And then there could be teacher-led groups where she is assessing groups of students or individual students. Looking at the assessments, how are the students assessed, and how could my team do better at assessing students? Well, they could be encouraged to use pre-tests or quizzes. They could use graphic organizers to find out where the students are at. They could have discussions to hear about the teachers or hear about their understanding. As in the picture here, the teacher could use just observation skills to understand where they're at, where they're playing a game here about math, and she could understand their concepts of where the student is, how they think, what they're thinking, and what they may need extra help in. You also could encourage teachers about encouragement, that in the differentiated classroom that they encourage the students individually, not as a group. They draw the attention inward instead of making it class-wide to where there might be embarrassment or hurt feelings. By giving notes of encouragement, the teacher could give individual tokens, tickets, or passes that could earn rewards or a free pass to the library or a free assignment, smiley face stickers or smiles or nods, or as this teacher's doing, just individually going and talking to that student at their desk, encouraging them, helping them, giving them a thumbs up, just a little nod and a shake of the head can really encourage a student. So as we look at differentiated instruction, I think that it's a great model, and I hope that in my future classroom, I hope to use this type of instruction to encourage all students and to be able to include each student regardless of their learning needs or their learning disabilities, that they would each feel like that they can be a part of the lesson, that they can achieve the same goals and objectives as the other students. Thank you for listening, and this is my works cited page.